from here. Originally, I come from France. And so I grew up in France for almost all my youth, for 18 years, and 2 years in Germany. So I speak French and German. And I came to, so I didn't grow up religious at all. Actually, I was more in a school like that. A Christian school. I actually used to sing in the church. I love singing. Later on, I found out that I was descendants from a tribe of Levi, which is the tribe that is in charge of singing. So, I guess there was a connection there. But when I turned 18, I guess I wanted to have more answers to the big questions I had, and kind of went on a quest a little bit to find out what life is about. Actually, this is a little bit what I want to talk about today, the purpose of creation. If there is any words you don't understand because of my accent, you can ask me to repeat. I won't be offended. Very proud of my French accent. And not of the French, of my French accent. So I started looking into everything, into religion, Christianity, into Islam. I started to look. The one I was the most attracted to was Buddhism. It's not really a religion per se; it's more a way of life. I like very much Buddhism because it was very what I felt was the most peaceful and the most, I guess peaceful. No wars. And I was attracted to that. But since I was born Jewish, I had to also look into Judaism. And I came to America to a seminary for 3 weeks. And I kind of fell in love with Judaism. And that was the place where I felt there was the best answers to my questions. And so far, I'm very satisfied with Judaism in terms of a way of life, as the other religions. So here I am. I've been living in New York for the past 15 years. Yeah, and little by little I became religious, and I became a rabbi later on, and now I work with Emmet, trying to teach about the beauty of Judaism, what it represents, and so I'm here to share with you some of the ideas. So the first question I want to kind of put on is, what do you think, according to what the Jewish philosophy is about what is the purpose of creation, the purpose of life? Any suggestion? Or what do you think for you is the purpose of life?
Be good to others.
What?
Be good to others.
Okay. That's very good. That's a very good. I like it. I think it's a good purpose. Yes?
To take pleasure in everything that the world has to offer.
Okay. That's good. I mean, you tap into the middle of the target. Yes, so in Judaism, we look at the purpose of creation as being able to achieve the highest possible pleasure a human being can achieve. Which is sometimes very strange, even to actually religious themselves. As I was becoming religious and learning about Judaism, I realized there's a lot of actually Jews, even religious, who actually don't know at all that you're allowed to have pleasure. It's very easy to be in a religion and cut oneself from the world, and especially with the commandments that they have. Judaism has a lot of commandments, 613 commandments, and you might be trapped into the laws without understanding what the purpose of those laws are, and you end up living a lot of a robot. God said this, so I do this. God said that, I do that. But it's very far from actually being the purpose of what we're here. God doesn't need robots. choice, creativity, and all those talents, it's meant to be used for something. No. So now, in Judaism, there's a way. Well, where do you think the place of that ultimate pleasure is? Where's the place where you actually achieve the highest possible pleasure? Experience it completely.
Judaism?
Yeah, or even the way you...
In your mind.
In your mind? Okay, that's true. But the place where actually, even in your mind, the place where we experience totally and fully, we believe, is in the world to come. Meaning here is the preparatory stage, is the place where I am preparing myself to achieve the highest possible pleasure, which is being in, once we die, we believe that we have a soul, and that the soul is eternal. Ladies and gentlemen, you're immortal. Many people in Judaism will believe that you never die. Your body might die, but your soul is like a hard drive. You can put it from one computer to another, one body to another. It never dies. Actually, we believe in the reincarnation, that the soul goes on and on as when you have a special mission in your life, and once you die, if you didn't finish your mission, you will be sent back in a later time in another body to finish your mission. And you will come back again and again until you actually accomplish your specific mission you were given by God. It's up to you to make your mission beautiful or painful, but basically you have many chances to fulfill it. And so we have that soul that is put in a body, and through the body we can achieve our mission, which is to get ready for the ultimate pleasure, which is the world to come. Now, if the ultimate pleasure is the world to come, right? Then why put us here in the first place? Why do I need to be put in this world? God can do anything. He could have put us straight in the place where we have total pleasure, without having to go through that whole humanity experience. Why do you think God wanted us to put us first here, and then to experience the ultimate pleasure after? Yes.
To be more appreciative of what's to come.
Okay, right. So when you're more appreciative of what's about to come, then what do we get out of it, of that experience?
And we get more out of it.
That's right. Yeah. The whole idea is that because I'm already here experiencing some pleasure and I'm working to achieve a higher level of pleasure, then my pleasure after is going to be much greater. We know very simply that if you give a kid, you just give him a car or money, and another kid, you make him work to earn that money to get the car, the kid who worked for it will have much more appreciation for his car. Not only that, he's going to protect it. It's going to be much more precious for him because I worked for that car, and now I care for it. It's precious to me. If it's a car for someone else, I got a car accident. It's not a big deal. It's not my car. I'll pay it. That's not right. We don't have the same sense of appreciation and the same sense. So God already made a system that it's not just that we're going to experience pleasure there, but He wants us to be here so that we'll experience even more pleasure when we get there. Because when you get there, you experience the pleasure that you have earned, the pleasure that I've worked for. And it's many times we think that why to go through so much trouble, and life is designed that way. And we always say, it's worth it. Why do we go to college? Let's just find a regular job, live a simple life, a small house, in the woods, very peaceful, very nice, a lot of animals. Listen to the birds in the morning, and live a very peaceful life. So I, instead of that, decide to go spend a few years in college and work hard for it so that I get a better job, a better life, a better living, a greater opportunity to make a difference and live a life that is different than just doing lower types of jobs. So the reason we're here is to actually earn that pleasure and to have a pleasure that is much greater than we would have if God would have give it to us right away. In Judaism we look at every experience in life as a teaching, as a teaching of something that we can exclude. How to put it? Everything here is like a metaphor for us to understand our relationship with God and what's happening in the spiritual world. So the fact that it's such an experience on a physical level, that when you work hard for something, gives you more pleasure. Therefore, that's why we experience it here, and that's exactly what's going to happen on the spiritual pleasure, on the spiritual level. So now in Judaism, actually we believe that it doesn't matter whether you're Jewish or you're not Jewish. You will everything depends on the deeds you do. If you work on becoming a mostly better person, and with Judaism we believe there's 613 commandments. For non-Jews there are 7 commandments, and each one has its own moral responsibility. And as long as nobody destroys the world, on the contrary, try to improve the world, then you'll be rewarded. Like you say, like being good to others, give to others. That's for everybody. And it's like, imagine, this is the way I like to explain. Imagine I come to you, right, and I give you a gift that you really like, right? And so I give you that gift, and because you really enjoy that gift, it gives you a level of happiness during your day. And because you were so happy, you actually decide to, you gave a smile to someone, and then you actually gave a bit of charity to a poor person on the side of the street, right? A chain reaction. When I'm gonna die and go to heaven, I would not just experience the good action I do. I will experience every chain reaction that I've created. Meaning, I will feel what you felt when I gave you the gift. I will feel the happiness of the person who smiled when you smile at them. I will feel the joy of the poor receiving the money and the delicious food he ate because you were able to give him that money. All this because I started a chain reaction. All that pleasure will be experienced with full force. Here I can only imagine and experience, maybe feel a bit like that, oh, I did a good action. But what's so special there is that it's an amplification of each one of the pleasure you have created here, each one of the good deed. So that's what's so special about there. Now, how do we know that this is actually the purpose of creation? So in the Bible, if we look in the Bible, it says right away, almost at the beginning, in the 6th day of creation, when God creates Adam, the first man, he tells him that the first thing he commands him to do, as he speaks to him, is go eat from all the fruits of the garden. And just after that, don't eat from that tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Right? Most people think that's the first thing he says, don't eat from that tree. But actually, the first thing he says is, no, go in the world, go enjoy, go take from the fruits. What do you think it means? Right? We are usually, when we study Bible, doesn't matter, Christian, Muslim, or Jews, we have a tendency to remember the stories that we learned when we were little children. And we think there was really that man who was naked with that woman, and there was a snake with legs who came to speak to Adam and Eve, and they were in the garden, and it's very nice. It's a very nice story, but if it's a divine book, it can't be just a nice story. It's a divine book. There are teachings, and not only as teaching, it's teaching that we can learn as we grow, and the metaphors can become deeper and deeper, and grow with us. So that I will learn everything in the Bible, learn a lesson for my daily life, something that I can apply, right? And for someone to be able to do that, it has to be divine. If the divine laws were, if the laws were made by human beings, how could they be sure that in 2013 I will still be able to apply those laws, right? So it's a book that is meant to change our life throughout the generation, and we have to learn the lessons on the level of intellectual awareness, I guess, on the IQ that we get throughout our lives. So the first one I'm going to say is go enjoy from all the fruits of the garden. Now, the fruit is really, what do we do? Why do we speak about actually eating? What do we do when we eat? When we eat, we take something from the outside, right, and I incorporate it into me. Right? In Judaism, eating is actually a service of God. It's a very holy act, and that's why they have blessing before eating and after eating. Eating is not just feeding my body. Eating means I take something from the outside, incorporate it into my being, and now I have energy that I'm going to use, hopefully for good. But it depends what I choose to do with that energy. But I elevate minerals, vegetables, or animals to the level of human being, becomes human flesh, and with that, I'll try to take that energy and do something good with it. And by this way, we elevate the world. So God wants us to be there in the garden, elevate the world by, so to speak, by taking the pleasure from this world. Now, it's actually very interesting how far the biblical laws go. The Talmud says, which is the oral tradition, it says that any food, any pleasure that was allowed by the Bible, and that you didn't try, right, you didn't taste, when you die, you'll be accountable for it. Meaning, if you have a pleasure that you're allowed to actually taste, you should taste it. You should not. Right? So that's why I spend sometimes when I buy a new juice, there's a new fruit juice that I never tried, pomegranate or whatever, lychee juice. Never tried lychee, but I really recommend it. It's very good. Then you should take the opportunity and try that. So we're going to see why, but every pleasure that exists is here to be experienced and enjoyed. Now, the trick is, so what's all those laws that seem sometimes to contradict certain pleasures, right, in Judaism, if we're supposed to try every possible pleasure? Well, we have a physical body, right, and we believe we have a soul, which is spiritual. Now, how do I know if I have a soul? How do I know which pleasure is good for my soul or not? On a physical level, if I was just a physical human being, I don't need the Bible. I can figure out, if I punch you, you're going to hurt. If I steal from you, we feel naturally the universal laws that everybody recognizes without the Bible, right? Although sometimes it's some place they think you can eat human beings, but in general, we have a natural tendency to know what's right, what's wrong, what pains other people, and what gives pleasure. But the thing is, really we have a soul, and we live in a world that is also spiritual. That means that there are spiritual things, spiritual viruses. Same thing, I can get sick from the food. I can get sick from a spiritual action, or from the spiritual which is behind certain things. So in general, for example, you have kosher food, right, which really is nothing to do. I mean, of course, on a physical level, an animal is not allowed to be pain, and therefore when they actually kill an animal, it has to be done the fastest way, in a way the animal doesn't suffer, and there's a whole actual explanation how it works, so that the pain doesn't go to the brain, the way they do it. So it's true that on a physical level, we pay attention to an animal, and that they should not have pain, and we should not scare them when they're about to get killed. And there are amazing stories about how the shochet, the one who kills the animal, actually will speak to the animal and make them feel secure before actually kills them. So when we do that, we are taking care of the physical aspect. But the reason there's certain animals we cannot eat is because those animals have spiritual soul, the animal soul, that can affect us. So now the reason we can explain a little bit the reason why, therefore, says to the Jews to eat kosher and not to the non-Jews. That's another aspect of it. It doesn't mean the non-Jew can eat just unholy things. It's a different explanation, but I might explain it after. So, what it is that now I need a book. I need the divine instruction on to know how I can spiritually be healthy, not just physically, but emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. So that's why I need the Torah, the Bible. That allows me to have complete health on a physical and spiritual level in order to enjoy life as much as possible. Now, in Judaism we take therefore pleasure very seriously, and it's a great sin. It says that God destroyed the second temple because we didn't serve God out of joy, out of happiness. Even in the service of God in Judaism, we are not allowed to serve God out of sadness. If you're sad, it's better not to do it. According to Kabbalah, if in Kabbalah they say that if you do something out of sadness and serving God, it actually destroys. It's not good for the spiritual world. Even in serving God, you have to find where the beauty is, where the pleasure is. Because it's a pleasure. If it's from God, it has to be pleasurable, right? If God recreated this world, it has to be that He created a world that is the most fun, or the most fun is not a good word, the most pleasurable way to live, with instruction on how to achieve that highest possible pleasure. So we have to be aware of that. The only thing that God wants is us to have the best time here and to get the most out of it. So if you encounter something in Judaism and you feel it's something unfair or that it's not pleasurable or it's painful or something, then don't do it. Think about, okay, you have to study. Sometimes because we misunderstand a law, sometimes it has not been well explained by the Rabbi. But if you go in the depth of every law, you will surely find something beautiful about it and how it can enhance your life on a daily basis. So we don't allow ourselves to be down, to be sad, or to be. It's not so. If serve God and you're happy, then you're having the wrong type of service or understanding about Judaism or serving God. Now, it's interesting, it goes so far in the Talmud that it says, and let's say there's a pleasure, that is forbidden by the Torah. Let's say you cannot eat pig, right? According to Judaism, you don't eat pig. So let's say, I crave pig. I just love pig. So how can I have more? I want to taste pig, please, God. Why do you do that? You say eat from try all the pleasures, right? Try all the pleasures. God says, no problem, my friend. I designed a world where for every forbidden pleasure that exists, I will create something permitted. But he is so desperate to try pig. Well, actually it says in the Talmud, there's the name of the fish, and the tongue of that fish actually tastes exactly like pig.
The tongue of the fish?
We're fine. It's the right pig. What? Yes, the tongue of that fish tastes like pig.
I didn't know fish have tongues.
What? No.
I'm sorry.
You never opened the fish?
No.
Try it. You'll see they have tongues. No, they have tongues. You never saw Free Willy? Put his
That's a whale.
Okay, yeah, but we're being well small. No, it's true. Like I don't. No, but I've seen tongue in a fish, but I used to cook. Trust me on that one. I don't know if all fish have tongue, but a lot. That fish at least has a tongue. So and let's say, right, so there's always, if there's something that you see in Judaism that is forbidden to do, right, the law that is forbidden, you can actually find a pleasure that is allowed, that is kosher and permitted to do, that would be exactly the same. So God wants to make sure that you understand. He's not trying here to get you or to make some scientific experiment. He's here to make you enjoy everything. Now, what's the pleasure all about? Why pleasure is so important? You know that our whole life is based on pleasure. Every choice we make is based on pleasure. Whether you're going to stay in bed in the morning or whether you decide to actually go to make a life and go to college, right? Yeah, the pillow feels good, but going to actually college and or work and have a familiar life, that's more pleasure, right? So we make choices based on how much pleasure I want to get out of it. Should I choose, this path or this path? Everything's compared, this food or this food, right? This woman or this husband, or right? Well, everything is in order we decide everything based on how much pleasure I want to get out of it. So that's why it's very important to understand there are 5 levels of pleasure. When you understand those 5 levels of pleasure, then you understand a little bit how you can live your life so that you focus on having the greatest pleasure possible here. So what are the 5 levels of pleasure? Lowest level, right, is physical. Right. Then the second level is emotional pleasure. Third is what I call the intellectual pleasures. 4 is the spiritual pleasures. And 5 is what I call the divine pleasure, which is God himself. Some people might think that spiritual and God is the same thing. Actually, in Judaism, Kabbalah especially, we say, no. The spiritual world is something created by God for us to understand that there's something higher. But God himself is none of those things. It's beyond all those things. All those things are levels of awareness or level of experience that can lead us to achieve the divine. The divine. So what does that mean? Does that mean that God created 5 levels of 4 lower levels? All those 4 levels, everything in my life is a choice between one of those levels. Staying in my bed in the morning, physical. Going to college to make a life, intellectual. So I will have to choose between the level 1 and 3. Usually level 3 works. I mean, most people make the right choice, but some mornings we decide to stay physical, right? So we have to understand it's very important, because if you want in life to know how to be happy, you have to align, okay, what is my choice based on? Physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, or divine? Oh, well, it's really one of those 4. Spiritual will put the religion, so one of those 4. So if you want to know what will give you more pleasure in life or greater level of happiness, you have to choose which one is higher. Then you know you have made a better choice in most cases. Now, what is powerful to understand is that it's not just that you have some pleasure here and therefore you make the right choice. It's more than that. Every pleasure you have is actually a piece of God, so to speak. Every pleasure is for you to understand, to have a glimpse of what it means to be one with God. It's interesting that the time when we have the most pleasure is usually when you put 2 things together, right? 2 friends, 2 animals also like to be together, play together, and on the highest level is a man and a woman, right? What is the greatest, or even like in terms of a lower level on food, right? What we do, we put the food in us, it becomes part of us, it gives us pleasure. What are the 2 greatest pleasures usually? Physical pleasure, sex, and food, right? Those are usually the 2 greatest. We spend most of the time or trying to have sex or trying to eat on the physical level. At least the men, especially for the sex. But we're trying to control ourselves. It's a very strong desire. So Judaism is very open about talking about everything and understanding human nature. But there's a very specific reason why it's like that. Now, it means that the sages say that you want to have a glimpse of what it means to be one with God, right? Because the ultimate goal of Judaism, of that pleasure, is actually to be one with God. The ultimate pleasure is being one with Him. So Judaism says, when you have sex and you have that pleasure, is 1/60th of the pleasure of being one with God, of being there in the world to come. It says, you want to have a glimpse? So 60 times an orgasm. Imagine. You cannot imagine. Because you think it, imagine. You see it? Right? So well, you understand, why do you think, if God created that pleasure, God created those relationships, those experiences, every one of those, it's like I go in a room, and there I experience the pleasure of sex, of food, and eating, and eating and sleeping, and all that. Great, wow, that's amazing. But you know what? There's something even higher than that. More pleasure, oh yeah. Emotional, love, experience love, the feeling you have for your children, the feeling you have for your wife, for your spouse. Wow, that's so powerful. By the way, there's more than that. High level, intellectual pleasure. What's intellectual pleasure? Pleasure is when you have a goal. Why intellectual means I have a mission, I have a project. People go to the army, I'm ready to fight for my country. But they're ready to give up a lot of physical pleasure for that. And emotional, they decide to go travel all around the world to find a cure for cancer or whatever. That's intellectual pleasure. Wow, that's such a powerful pleasure. Then, wait, it's not finished. You can go to the next room. You can have spiritual pleasure. Yoga. Or whatever. Different way is very hard to explain this spiritual pleasure because that's a personal experience that is very hard to describe in human terms. But when we pray, when we meditate, in Judaism is meditating, prayer is really a meditation. And meditation is, I guess, one of the places where we have the greatest glimpse in this world of spiritual, or actually the study of Torah, of Kabbalah. Kabbalah teaches you how to have spiritual pleasure. And you have all those pleasures and say, wait. See, all what you had, right? All those pleasures, physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, combine them in one pill, right? Like Limitless. Give you one pill. Right? Well, guess what? There's something more powerful than ecstasy or any one of those pills. It's called God. And God is that experience of all those pleasures, all this pleasure that you experience in this world, they are all here to give you a glimpse of what it means to be one with God. Well, I want to have that. Judaism is a pathway to teach you about life on how many different pleasures there are and how it's all here to lead you closer to God. Right? The problem is, so as a Jew, our mission as a Jew is to become an expert in pleasure. Become an expert. Because, I can come and take my cup, and as an American, I'll take one from California, nothing against them, and make a drink and one shot. Good wine. Or I can come as a Frenchman, oui. Come, and I let the wine breathe, and I look at the color, very nice, beautiful, oui. And then I put it in my mouth, and then, you have 36 taste buds. No, actually you have more than that. A few thousand taste buds in your tongue. And then you let it go around where it's more bitter, more sweet, all that, and then you let it go, right? And with just one little sip, and a slow drinking, I get much more pleasure than that American guy who just took a shot from a $300 bottle of wine, right? Why? Because I've trained myself to enjoy the pleasure. The same thing in anything, in food. You can just eat the food like that, right? Or you can eat, in French plates, they have much smaller portion, and they eat very slowly, and they take time to enjoy the food. We don't have fast food. Now we have the American model. I'm speaking about the good part of France, Very good. Yes?
Can the fifth pleasure be experienced while alive or not?
Sometimes you can have that. That's rare. That's rare. But that's what you will experience fully. You can experience it, but you will experience fully when you die. So all these are glimpses for you to get a taste of what it is to be one with God. And the ultimate thing is that's why I believe the purpose of more food. And here comes more pleasure. Right? So the ultimate why is it that when a man and a woman come together, that's when you have the greatest pleasure? What is it? Maybe what?
Because you're creating.
Right, you're creating. And it's more than that. Because you're becoming one with that person. In the ultimate goal of being one with God, right? It's being one with God, and that's the highest pleasure. How can I understand that concept? Well, guess what? You can be one with a woman, and that you'll have a glimpse of what it means to be one with God. That's why the ultimate pleasure comes only when you're one with that person, right? And don't think that doing it alone can give you more pleasure than with someone else. You might think so, but it's, if you're an expert in relations, you'll know that it's not true. And it actually is interesting. In Judaism, for any type of thing, from sex, food, to any pleasure in the world, there's instruction on how to take the most out of it and how to experience it and make it even more and more spiritual and closer to God. So that's why in Judaism, the most holy act is actually intimacy. Intimacy is the most holy act you can do in the world. Oh yeah, but you can have. It's also the most unholy act you can have. It depends what you do with it. You can be like an animal, or you can be right. You can just be physical, or take that act and make it divine. Depends what you have in mind. If you have in mind to be one, and to understand what it means to be one with someone, then you experience something similar to divine, spiritual, right? That's why there's actually something that I call to the 5 levels of love: physical love, emotional love, intellectual love, spiritual love, and divine love. It's our whole goal as a human being. This year, past 2-3 years, my mind shifted from the purpose of the world is to have pleasure to the purpose of my creation being to be married. Really, everything is around that. Someone who loses everything but doesn't lose the love for his wife, he's fine. He's fine. If someone has a fight, I know if I have a fight with my wife, sometimes it happens. Usually it's my fault. Then what happened? I don't work well. I'm not happy. I'm bothered. I'm not. If my wife tells me I love you and you're the greatest husband, then everything works. Anything can happen during the day. I'm fine. I'm happy, right? So that's why I feel that really the whole. And why is that? Because God created a situation where you will be confronted with someone opposite than you. Really opposite. There's nothing more different than a man or woman. Even an animal is, I think, easier to understand than a spouse, right? It's true. There's nothing more. The man doesn't understand anything about women, and the woman doesn't understand anything about men. But what? At the end, that's why the greatest powerful. When you take two forces opposite and you try to put them together, you create a fusion. That's where you can have the greatest possible energy and love. If we were two clones, like two people who are exactly the same, people think, oh yeah, we're so similar, and we think that we're going to have the greatest marriage because we're so similar. Not true. You can have a great marriage, but you want the ultimate extreme marriage, fusion, power, energy. So if you'll find someone that is very different than you, and you work at it, because there's so much more work to do. And as you do more work, you love each other more because you invested so much in a relationship to make things work. That's why I really look at the marriage as you and God. God is the thing that's the most opposite than you. There's nothing more different than you than God, really, besides your wife or husband. So our whole relationship between husband and wife is a training for us to understand how to be one with something that is opposite than you. And when you understand that, you can have the greatest glimpse of what it means to be one with God on 5 levels. Right? When the 5 levels of love you experience with your wife or spouse is the 5 levels of unity you can experience with God. And finish with one more idea is that we have to understand that the whole. Sometimes we think that then life has to be super pleasurable from beginning to an end. But what about the problems and the sickness and there's a lot of things. Judaism speaks about all of these and how it fits to the big picture of of pleasure and all that. But what is clear to everybody is that the more we work for something, the more we have pleasure in it. Right? It's, like we said at the beginning, the fact we're here and we're not straight in the world to come, the world of pleasure, is because God wants us to earn it, because when we earn it, we'll have more pleasure. So what happens is that the more I work for something, the more I put effort into it, the more pleasure I have. And sometimes it's almost crazy how it shocks us. If you ask a mother, say, tell me, what was the most painful day of your life? Usually most women will say childbirth. Okay, I understand. Tell me, what is the most powerful, awesome, beautiful day of your life? I give birth to my child. Oh, you have a double disorder? What do you mean? You say this is the worst day, the most painful day, this is the most beautiful day of your life? Yeah. Because pain doesn't mean there's no pleasure. Sometimes pain leads to pleasure, but now be careful. I'm not saying that you should have pain to have pleasure. we're not like that, I'm beating myself in Judaism. So, yeah, I hurt myself, I have pleasure, more pleasure. We don't believe in that. But sometimes the effort, it's not the action, it's the suffering of the pain, it's the effort that you do that really can create more pleasure. So what we have to remember from all that is that, yes, a Jew has the responsibility to be an expert in pleasure. That's what the Torah is for, to teach you how to live a life and enjoy as much as possible all the levels of pleasure that exist, the 5 levels, which correspond to the soul and everything, so that your life is the greatest possible experience you can have, and it's also a preparation for the world to come. And understanding that sometimes the pain or the effort that we do that seems to be so hard, actually, the marriage is very hard. The hardest work is the work of a marriage. It's harder than college, I promise you. It's harder than anything. The marriage is the most difficult experience. But because it's the most difficult work, to change my own being, to learn to be one with someone else, that's where I will have the greatest unity, the greatest love, the greatest pleasure on level. So what has to do with what's different between Jews and non-Jews on that level? A Jew is supposed just to send a message to the world about we are here to live the greatest possible experience. This life is from God, it has to be amazing. And the Jews are just here to have they were given the Torah as a responsibility to teach the world how to have the greatest possible pleasure. It's just the only difference between Jews and non-Jews is a difference of responsibility, and that we are responsible to teach that, and anybody who wants to take that responsibility and also teach it is welcome to join Judaism. But we don't push it because it's a matter of choice. I choose myself if I want to take that responsibility of focusing and living my whole life working on understand how can I maximize my life with pleasure, and then to share it with the entire world, right? When we understand that, then we understand the value of being Jewish, of really to have a Jewish life. You can be Jewish and be completely disconnected from Judaism, right? When I'm born Jew, it doesn't mean I have the Jewish pleasure on all 5 levels. As a Jew, it just means I have the responsibility to take those pleasure and make the best out of it. And then, when I experience it, I understand it, then I can share it with the rest of the world. But for this, now the hardest part is to take the Bible, understand how from all those commandments I learn to have those pleasure from that. And I take wise rabbis. I met a lot of rabbis that they don't understand Judaism. They understand their laws and what we do, but they don't understand how those laws help me come close to God and come closer to human beings, have more pleasure from life. It's very easy to have the title of rabbi today. You can't even have it on internet. The rabbi, the web rabbi, right? But someone who is a real rabbi is someone who can take any laws, or almost any laws, because it's a growth process, and show you what the beauty is, how you can be a better human being, how you can have more pleasure out of life. That's what really I believe Judaism is, and that's the greatest. For me, it's that's why it's so amazing, because I didn't find any other religion who was or any other way of life that was giving more pleasure than this way. I always tell, if you can find me a way to be more happy in life, or give me more pleasure, I'll follow you. But try to beat me in pleasure. I'm pretty good at pleasure. I'm an expert in pleasure. Right? So please, if you find something more pleasurable, I'll be happy to follow and learn from you. I thank you for listening. If you have any questions on any pleasure, on anything about Judaism, welcome to ask. Any questions? No questions? Are you having pleasure right now?
Yes.
Good. That's intellectual pleasure. All right. Thank you very much for listening. And there's more pleasure here, more pleasure there. Moshe from Moses from the Mount Sinai, bring some pleasure down. Lisa.
We had divine pleasure.
Divine pleasure.
My pleasure.
What is it? Oh, this is signing sheet. Everybody sign sheet.
Was it your sign? No,
Is it?
it's